Good evening, and thank you for being here in the midst of these challenging times. My name is Scout Meredith Best, and I am a student project manager at the Clark Forum for Contemporary Issues at Dickinson College. Since our activities are shared digitally to the internet, let's take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technology, structure, and ways of thinking that we use every day. We are using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many Indigenous communities. Even the technologies that are central to much of the art we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect Indigenous people worldwide. I invite you to join me in acknowledging all of this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good of this time and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. On behalf of the Clark Forum for Contemporary Issues and the Department of Theater and Dance, I would like to welcome you to tonight's event, Devising Civil Practice, Listening is the New Revolution. This event is part of our semester theme, Civic Engagement and the Liberal Arts. In these times of disillusionment and division, art has served as a catalyst for change. It has also become a contentious political issue, with the Trump regime threatening to eliminate the National Endowment for the Arts in its latest budget plan. This dismissal of the arts by this current administration is significant since the recent Black Lives Matter protesters and artists have created street art, murals, and paintings, which have worked to advance this important movement. Furthermore, the act of creating and examining has been proven to contribute to a higher IQ, increased brain plasticity, and decreased impulsiveness, all important characteristics for civic engagement. Personally, I have seen the impact that art can have firsthand. I grew up in a town of 800 people where my parents ran a small community art center. Seeing my neighbors of different social, political, and economic backgrounds unite to paint a mural or attend a concert was an important lesson that art can serve to bring us together, even in the most contentious times. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce tonight's speaker. Michael Rohd is the founding artistic director of the National Sojourn Theatre, as well as an institute professor at Arizona State University's Herberger Institute for the Arts and Design. He is the author of the book, Theater for Community, Conflict, and Dialogue. He is the lead artist for Civic Imagination at the Center for Performance and Civic Practice, where his current projects include the Catalyst Initiative, Civic Body, and Learning Labs. He has recently collaborated with the Bush Foundation, the Singapore Drama Educators Association, Americans for the Arts, and Cleveland Public Theater, among others. In 2015, he received an Otto Rene Castillo Award for Political Theater and the Robert Gard Foundation Award for Excellence. There will be a question and answer session immediately following the program, so please type your questions into the YouTube live chat next to this video at any time. Thank you for attending. Michael, you may now begin your presentation.
Thanks, Scout. Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Thanks to Dickinson and the Clark Forum for having me here. I'd like to start by acknowledging my privilege as a white man in this space, where I'm being paid to hold the mic and share ideas, and therefore, I acknowledge my responsibility this evening to speak with purpose about the topic I will address and to speak with purpose about this moment, built on a history of moments that got us here. At the start here, actually, I'd like to share two links, both related to Black Lives Matter and social justice uprisings that surround us these days. Sarah, if you could share the Word document in the YouTube chat first, thank you. This one is a framework of anti-racist resources, articles, podcasts, books, exercises that I find really useful for personal work and growth and for sharing and using in group settings. The other link, the second one, and Sarah will share a spreadsheet now. It's a spreadsheet of organizations around the US, state by state, that support and work for Black lives and Black causes. You can learn about them. You can support their advocacy financially. You can get involved. Both these links are public docs. I didn't make them. My organization didn't make them, but we share them with permission. White supremacy as an ideology and as historic and contemporary state-sanctioned violence against Black Americans and other groups of people is here. It's always been here. It is the blood-soaked soil upon which we walk, and it is growing desperate and more visible and bolder. And last night, it was not repudiated by the sitting president of the United States. It was instead enabled, invited. So this evening, I've been invited to speak about the question, what is the role of an artist today? Context and questions. This time of multiple pandemics requires deep reflection on individual and institutional values and practices. COVID-19, quarantine, climate catastrophe, and a public health crisis marked by inequitable resource allocation and tragically disproportionate health outcomes alongside the global response to George Floyd's murder at the hands of police and the social justice uprising that has followed. All these have made systemic and structural racism an articulated, visible public narrative in ways that bring us to what, as Angela Davis said recently, is a moment that no one could see coming, but many have spent 50 years preparing for. And looming in the background, as last night was a reminder of, a precarious electoral process, goaded by a president unwilling to commit to a peaceful transfer of power. All of it demands the question, how are artists prepared for this moment? How have we contributed to disruptive discourse and field-shifting practice in the spaces where we engage? How are we reckoning with times when our presence may have upheld rather than dismantled white supremacy? How can we be more effective allies and accomplices for individuals, institutions, and communities who have been historically denied visibility for their work and justice for their lives? So what is the role of art? Is it beauty? Is it delight? Function, tradition, identity, culture, resistance, action, change, communal experience, personal expression, transgression, challenge? What do you think the role of art is? And what do we need right now? Healing, repair, recovery, rebuilding, reimagining? What values do we bring to this moment? What values do artists bring? What values do arts organizations bring? What responsibilities do we have? There are no sweeping, coherent American answers to questions about values and responsibilities. Look at our nation. Hundreds of millions of people bound by what? The financial currency we share, the laws and policies whose origins and intentions many of us feel detached from, an impulse toward representative government that has been hijacked by capitalism run amok, leaving many looking in from the outside. What do artists bring? What sensitivities, preoccupations, commitments, abilities, dreams, warnings do artists bring in this moment, at this time? A letter. I wrote this letter on April 7th, a few weeks after the world mostly shut down from coronavirus. It was shared with members of the National Association of Counties and read by county managers and employees all over the United States. Dear state, county, city, town, and all local officials and the staff who serve them. First, thank you. Thank you for this work, your work in this time of crisis. Thank you for sleeping less and Zooming more. Thank you for fighting to save lives and livelihoods. And thank you for thinking about today and tomorrow, even as tomorrow comes barreling at each of us like an unknowable 18-wheeler. Second, I wish you and your families and neighbors health and safety. None of us will be untouched by this in the end, I believe. So I wish you strength and I send you solidarity. Third, I am an artist and I am an educator. I often facilitate and design process for people in spaces like the ones you walk day after day, public health departments, municipal agencies, community development organizations. In crisis, in our communities, we need to solve problems. In recovery, we need to collaborate and imagine. In artists, and designers, culture makers, and heritage holders, your community has powerful responders, first responders already in place, individuals whose lives and skills are about problem solving, collaboration, and imagination. And fourth, artists are often called on in times of crisis and recovery to bring their expertise to three areas: communication, connectivity, and hope. Do that. Work with artists to deliver messages that will save lives. Work with artists to prevent social distancing from shredding social fabric. Work with artists to inspire vision and help people stay strong and loving and generous. But also work with artists when local stakeholders hold varied and contrary perspectives around a challenging recovery issue. Because artists don't just bring people together in the abstract. Many have the skills to build real, effective coalitions. Work with artists when, in this unprecedented moment, a new problem has arisen and you need to envision a truly creative solution, because artists don't just solve problems in their studios. Many have the skills to help solve problems in civic space. Work with artists when, in this time of economic hardship and system crashes, you wrestle with issues of justice and transparency. And you struggle with how to disrupt histories and practices of inequity, because artists do not just offer their own visions of what can be. Many have the skills to engage the public with purpose. Many have the skills to ask hard questions with love. Many have the skills to hold space for difficult conversations with courage. I invite you to not just call upon artists when you need the beautiful, though they will always bring you beauty, and we need beauty now more than ever. I invite you to call upon artists, culture makers, designers, and heritage holders when you need the powerful, purposeful practice of building and rebuilding community. Artists are in your place. They are, as my friends at Springboard for the Arts in St. Paul, Minnesota say, a natural resource everywhere. Engage them, pay them, collaborate with them. We wish you health, safety, and resilience. Michael. Commitments. Center for Performance and Civic Practice, CPCP, a place I work, is a team of artists. We believe that with the right approach, the same tools and capacities artists use to make art can be utilized to transform systems and improve the outcomes of government and community-driven efforts and programs. We commit to racial justice and to hosting and supporting practices of inclusion. We commit to using the word artist expansively to include those who think of themselves as designers, culture makers, and heritage holders. We commit to the collaborative act of field building, cross-sector, arts-based, community-led transformation. We commit to supporting the growth of local capacities, to grow circles of stakeholders through equitable engagement, to partner effectively across fields of experience and knowledge, to tackle local challenges and imagine creative opportunities for change. We co-design, we facilitate, we coach, and we support. And we have one core principle. If you are working for change, the people you hope will benefit from that change must be the authors of the vision for change. They must be co-designers and co-leaders of any strategies to accomplish that change. We're about to share a 5-minute video with you. Take a break from talking and show you something. It's from a few years ago and was made by Nashville's MetroArts, the Arts Council for the city of Nashville. It details a program of ours at CPCP called Learning Lab, and it shares some stories from round 1 of that Learning Lab. We have since conducted another round in Nashville, 2 rounds in Cleveland, and we're working with other places around the US to get more learning labs up and running. I'll be back to say more in a couple minutes. Sarah, you can start that video whenever you are ready, and thank you. We're going to start again with sound this time. It is, as we all have been experiencing these last months, the beauty of technology and shifting platforms. Sarah, you tell me if it's possible or not.
And our mission is that we drive a vibrant and equitable community through the arts. One of the primary ways we do that is by supporting artists. And this lab program is a new way of looking at artistic practice in our community.
We're not out there trying to tell folks what kind of art they should make. We're really interested in figuring out how to build awareness within artist communities and within folks who are not artists about the potential for artists to work collaboratively in ways that may seem new.
My name is Courtney Adair Johnson. I call myself a reuse artist.
My name is Xavier Payne, and I'm an illustrator. My name is Lysander Bryant, and I'm a photographer, visual artist.
My name is Julia Whitney Brown, and I'm a relational artist who's currently working with clay in the way of building a pottery studio that will employ individuals with intellectual disability. And I'm really interested in kind of bringing everybody to the table in a community setting.
Initially, the lab was a collaboration with the National Endowment for the Arts. So the initial seed funding for the lab gave money for us to bring in the Center for Performance and Civic Practice to work on kind of the artist coaching component and artist training component.
And think about not just the output of their respective discipline or practice, but to really look at what are the tools you use to do your work and how can those tools be deployed in processes other than your art making.
The most valuable thing was probably the day when I saw other artists' processes and basically how they did community work and public artwork.
I think the coaching really helped me begin to take ownership of it, but it was something I was able to talk through with other people.
So a lot of the artists coming to Learning Lab are interested in either continuing a practice or deepening a practice of partnering with community organizations that focus on change work. If you are attempting to impact or change a community or a group of people, you have to be in deep dialogue with that group of people.
The community at large, tapping into and finding out what the community needs and wants in their center, how to get the community engaged.
It seemed with Learning Lab, the instructors set us up for like success from the jump, just telling us what exactly to expect. So we got in that situation that everybody was just on the same page.
I am very excited by their excitement of how they are personally looking for opportunities to use these different tools and concepts and ideas that they learned in the Learning Lab.
We heard more and more and more from neighborhoods who wanted authentic engagement with artists and the production of their work. And so when you think about both quality professional development for artists and sort of authentic neighborhood work, you start to put together a structure that tries to do both of those things. And that's where Lab really came from.
It's not just go out and plan something, put together a bunch of stuff and then walk away from it. It's been this like ongoing relationship thing. I work out at Magruder Family Resource Center. I've been building an artist residency called MSPAR, Magruder Social Practice Artist Residency.
The title of it officially is Don't Tread on Me. It's a billboard project that was also capped by a art exhibition, just kind of calling attention to the state of the city, the state of minorities in the city, particularly Black Americans.
With MetroArts investment, Joe was able to come into the picture.
Joanna Meakin, and I'm the assistant at the pottery studio.
Miller Rich is a business in Nashville that places people with disabilities in homes, in jobs, in community events, basically creating culture and inclusion for them.
The love yourself part is, like I said, just about self-love, but the love your enemy is really about, sometimes I feel like we can be our own enemy, like we can kind of be in our own way.
A number of artists in Learning Lab who have said to us over the course of the process that this invitation to expand how they think about their practice, but actually for a lot of them has affected their creative output in ways that they're very excited about.
So at the end of the day, the lab is a perfect mission in action, which is to support artists in their careers and to support neighborhoods and their work, their stories, and their success.
I feel like it's important to the community and to artists. I feel like artists are problem solvers. Your skill level, no matter your age or no matter your ability, like you are included, like you are part of this giant feast that we have that is life.
One of the biggest takeaways was just how you really just have to get out in the streets. It's kind of like you can't rely on emails, computers, phone calls. Like you got to get out and touch people.
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks for watching that. I'm going to go on from there and use sort of the end of that video about that project to take me into this next idea in this next section. As you can see, I think in that set of examples, I've been lucky enough to spend time in spaces where artists successfully aim public imagination and collaborative expression at equitable participation in the shaping of place. If place is geography bound by shared meanings, if place plus time equals change, what does change do to meaning? How is meaning shaped? By whom? For whom? Artists keep, make, and transform meaning. It is what they do. Their relationship to place, in addition to inhabiting it, is to see it and listen to it, whether intentionally or not. Every creative act, every moment of imagination and expression in a place contributes to that place's shape, which returns to the question, by whom and for whom? What is the role of an artist today? If I commit my own artistic practice to community-defined outcomes and not just my own creative expression, must I give up my own voice and expertise? No. But in addition to a point of view and life experience, in addition to a particular set of creative assets and aesthetic sensibility, an artist today needs curiosity, humility, the capacity to listen, and respect for the voice and expertise of community collaborators, whether you are of that community or not. The intelligence, lived experience, cultural practices, and local knowledge of place-based community collaborators are assets as valuable as any an artist brings, no matter their discipline or training. I have seen printmakers build collaborative tools that residents use to imagine a vision for growth in their community. I've seen theater directors aim their skills toward the facilitation of conversation between residents with different beliefs and opinions about public good. I've seen musicians deploy practices of ensemble in spaces where dialogue was tense and difficult. I've seen heritage holders use story to bring community together for problem solving a local challenge. And I've seen writers collaborating with designers to help local leaders make complex issues legible to local stakeholders. These examples all have something in common. They each demanded the creation of a process where experience was centered on listening as a value, an action, and an outcome. Each demonstrated an understanding that if relationship is central to building community, then listening is the currency of making change. And if listening is the currency of making change, what is the quality of our listening as a nation right now? Do we have the capacity to listen and hear together? Or do we live in such opposing realities that the truths we hear bear little resemblance to the meanings we make? Are we a nation that knows how to listen? If on November 3rd, our election results are close, and Donald Trump and his GOP supporters and allies say, there is no way we lost this election, this was stolen. If lawyers in battleground states file motions, if strategists spin rhetoric of fraud, if White House lawyers advise state legislatures to remake and revise electoral college results, what will listening look like? Will it look like shouting? Will it look like marching? will it look like laying our bodies down on the steps of the Capitol? Amidst a battle that is alternately described as a culture war, a fight for the American soul, and a sinking realization that we are now the longest running experiment in democratic self-governance in human history, listening seems very near impossible right now. So, if listening is the currency of making change, and we are possibly in a moment of change in this nation right now, what does listening mean to you? Who do you listen to? Right now, you're listening to me, kindly, generously, spending some minutes here this evening on your computer with your Zoom. How do you separate out noise from voice? How do you seek depth and not get misdirected by deceit? How do you avoid the trap of echo, the stagnation of affinity, the quagmire of a bubble that makes ideas you don't agree with absent from your consciousness entirely? How do we get better at listening? Who models listening for us? Who helps us build our muscles for listening? Who helps remind us that no matter how angry we get, no matter how strong a stand we need to make, no matter how loud we need to scream, in the end, we will fail to conceive of, manifest, and sustain a more just future if we have not cultivated our capacity to listen to each other. Listening demands patience. Do we have that today? Listening demands curiosity. Do we have that today? Listening demands care. Do we have that today? Listening demands a willingness to be wrong, to discover, to imagine that which you have not yet imagined. The artists I am most moved by, makers and thinkers such as Ping Chong and Augusto Boal and Nick Zaleski and Carlton Turner and Ann Kilkelly and Liz Lerman and Daniel Bernard Romaine and Wanda de la Costa and Maria Rosario Jackson and Marty Pottinger and Anu Yadav and Nikiko Masamoto. These artists and so many more work beyond the studio to listen. Through listening, they engage, they activate, they challenge, and they imagine. And this is what it comes down to, I think. The role of the artist today, to imagine, to light up public imagination. If we fight, but don't know what we are fighting towards, we lose. If we change, but don't know what we are changing to, we fail. If amidst recovery, we rebuild, but don't reimagine, we calcify unjust, racist practices and systems, and we miss the greatest opportunity in a generation to do better for everyone. Public imagination is necessary for public will to coalesce. Public will is necessary for collective action to make public good. Artists, designers, culture makers, and heritage holders are a local resource in every place to help us not only get from here to there, but to invent there, to co-create there, to co-design there, and devise how we make the journey. I wish for you and your loved ones health and safety. I wish for all of us justice. I wish for each of us the courage and capacity to listen and to imagine. Thank you. And I hope right now we're going to have a conversation.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was a fantastic speech. Folks, we're now going to begin the question and answer portion of this presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the side of the YouTube chat at any time. Our first question is, how have you seen how art brings people together with different views?
In 1995, I think, I was doing a project I worked on a project in rural Oregon that was a community-based project in a very small rural community that had it was a town where the high school was filled with the children of families who were either unemployed because mills had closed and the timber industry was dying there, or the children of families who were deeply active in the environmental movement. And the tension in the town and how it played out in that high school was intense and large. And that particular project, which began before I was part of it as a visiting artist and continued after, was about using theater workshops and story sharing as a way, first for young people and then for families to come together and talk about their experience in the town, the generations before, and the experiences they were having living there at the moment. I will never tell you a story about a moment when art radically in one moment changed someone's mind and everyone all of a sudden got along. But I feel like I have many experiences that I've been a part of, that I've observed, that I've learned about, where art making together, working collaboratively, have allowed folks to build relationship and build community and build trust, and sometimes take steps forward in the potential to listen, to hear, and to figure out how they could envision something a little different. I certainly know that the tension in that high school was deeply shifted after that project. That's one of a bunch of stories I could share, but that's one that comes to me as you ask the question right now.
Thank you. Our next question is, you talk a lot about the idea of an echo in our own processes of listening. What is your advice for removing that echo so we receive a broader point of view?
It's such a great question. You know, I have to say, this is a really weird format to be in this conversation, right? Scout's doing a great job and I'm grateful for it. But like, don't you wish we could sort of all be on Zoom right now, or better yet, in person, and just talk? Because that question about echo is really a funny question to answer me, just to Scout and me, while you listen and I can't see you and we can't see each other. Because I think getting past the echo is being in conversation with folks who are not in a variety of ways the same as us, the same background, the same lived experience, the same affinities, the same likes, the same perspectives, the same faiths, the same culture, so many things. But if you're asking for tips, I can say, I think social media, here we are on YouTube, I think social media is one of the most destructive elements in our current society that sort of leads us into echoes. There are opportunities to use social media to get out of those echo chambers, but I think one really has to work hard for those. I try to look at virtual spaces in the last batch of months, but before that, out in the world, to try to be in spaces and in conversation with folks who I know, believe, and feel and see things differently than me. I try, although it can be hard, even with friends or family who believe different things, to be in those conversations and not get rattled or want to shut down or walk away. I think reading, I think traveling, and by traveling, I don't mean necessarily getting on an airplane and going far. I just mean like go somewhere you haven't been in the place where you live. Go to a place that isn't a place you frequent. Find a friend who has some friends you don't know who they tell you maybe believe some different things than you do, and try to arrange a dinner, a meal. Find a community organization or an arts and culture organization in your community that might be interested in hosting what we could call potlucks or salons or public forums, or however we want to think about them. But you have to work to get out of your echo, and the echo is more comfortable, more pleasurable, more convenient. So you have to decide if you want to spend the energy on that. I know sometimes I don't, but I want to spend the energy on it, but I try. The work helps me do that.
Thank you very much. Our next question, can you talk about how you invite benefactors of change, who also must be the authors of that change, to the table while continuing to decenter the institution itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like in a way, you can sort of, you didn't ask this, but I could tilt it just the smallest bit and say, yeah, so, you know, if I'm working with a historically white or predominantly white institution that is attempting to work in and with communities of color, in the place where they are, how does that institution not center their own needs and their own thoughts and visions, but center others? It's a great question that a lot of different folks are addressing in different ways. For me, it all comes back to listening and relationships, and to not being transactional. So for instance, if an arts institution that has historically not had relationships outside a specific bubble or audience population, and they want to reach out and build new relationships and decenter themselves, it has to do with committing to a duration of time, committing to relationship rather than just project, committing to dialogue and time and resource sharing, and most importantly, sharing leadership. So if an institution wants to decenter its whiteness, its supremacist history, its way of perpetuating oppression and structural racism within its walls and in its place, you have to figure out, how are we going to share decision-making power? How are we going to share leadership? What are we going to give up? What are we willing to risk? What cost are we willing to commit to? And that can be something people refer to as advisory circles or accountability circles, where we say we've historically made decisions about our institutional programming and content on our own. Sometimes we've gotten community feedback. So now we're going to build a circle locally with folks who we have not made a good faith commitment to over time. And we're going to take the time to earn trust. And we're also going to take the time to pay those folks to join us in circle and hold us accountable. And we're going to build structures with them for how they can hold us accountable and how they can ask us questions and interrogate us, and not have us just say, yeah, we listened to this advisory circle and then we went on and did the thing we were going to do. So I do think a lot about listening, accountability, duration, commitment, and I think decentering is related to all those things. And I'll name Springboard for the Arts. I'll name Of, By, For All, that you can search on Google and get information about. I'll name the work happening at Actors Theater in Louisville with a new artistic director the last year who's been doing phenomenal recentering work, I think, there. Jacob Padron at Longworth Theater in New Haven, Connecticut. Stephanie Ibarra at Baltimore Center Stage in Baltimore. All these folks are leaders and organizations that are trying to take on what you're talking about. Mickey Garcia at the ASU Art Museum in Arizona. Some examples.
Thank you very much. Our next question: have you successfully invited community-based artists to conversations about social change, especially artists who may not feel that they have agency and voice in previous conversations and processes? And I know you touched on that a little bit in the answer to your last question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word invite is interesting, right? Like, who gets to, I'm not going to do air quotes, although I was tempted to, who gets to set the table? Who gets to make the invitation list? Who gets to welcome folks? Who gets to ask for what they need? Who gets to ask for what they want? Who gets to create the agenda? Resources and power and history tend to dictate answers to a lot of those questions. So when we are invited in, for instance, to a learning lab process, like with Cuyahoga Arts and Culture in Cleveland, where we've been working for the last batch of years, currently in round 2 of our learning lab there, second round. If the question is, have we successfully invited folks in, you'd have to ask participants if they feel successfully invited in and welcomed. My experience is that we've worked, for instance, with CAC, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, to create a call that has been transparent and open for local artists who are doing community-based work, have or want to move more into that space, to come together and create a learning community. We then consider ourselves part of that learning community. Sometimes we're guiding or facilitating, sometimes a little bit of teaching, a lot of learning and listening as well. And then it becomes not about us necessarily inviting folks forward, but us figuring out, what does this circle want to invite in terms of the action that this circle has the capacity, potential, and desire to take on. The short answer is yes. I think we're involved in many instances, but I think you have to interrogate what invitation means, and particularly at this moment, where institutional power and inequities are really being examined, and so therefore, who gets to invite and accept and create the charge is all being challenged and disrupted, which I think is a really good thing. And we are in that, sometimes in very exciting and comfortable ways, and sometimes in uncomfortable ways, and trying to learn in those moments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges you faced in empowering Black artists and Black communities through the arts?
Well, I don't think it's my place to empower Black artists and Black communities. I think it's my place to work from relationships with Black artists I currently have, work to amplify and prioritize the voices and work of Black artists that I come to know or that I am introduced to, make opportunities for those artists and their communities and circles to have the resources to accomplish what they want to accomplish and work on what they want to work on. My role as a white man in spaces where I'm encountering or hosting or engaging with Black artists and other BIPOC artists is to listen, amplify, follow, collaborate, share, and move resources towards, and again, listen and learn, not to empower. And I don't ascribe poor intention to the use of that term, but I think that term historically has really come from a pretty colonial and kind of white supremacist place. Like, I have the power to empower someone else, and even acknowledging the inequity of our system that does give me a certain privilege and power as a white man in lots of spaces, I still can't operate from the notion or perspective that I can empower someone else. I have to look at all of us in community together and figure out what my role is towards a more just world together, and particularly for Black and BIPOC artists and community members.
Thank you very much. How have you made a successful case to non-arts organizations and industries about how civic practice might be useful?
It's kind of one of the more difficult, but also one of the more fun parts of what we do. And the simple answer to how have we made the case is we have either gotten them into spaces where the work is happening and made it possible for them to experience that, or told stories about the work persuasively through different modes of expression, or connected them with work already happening in the place where they are, and help with the translation between the thing that's happening, the artist doing the work, and how they see the work. Maybe something more specific would be useful, working with a health department that is struggling to communicate to residents in a place about a public health crisis. Could be any number of public health crises. Of course, in this moment, one thinks about COVID. And, that public health department historically has had someone in marketing, and someone who does graphic design, and someone who works possibly the last 10 or 15 years under the term of community engagement. But they also have, in the place where they are, artists who actually work in the visual arts, work in the performing arts, work in music, work in museum, work in film, work in installation, who have tremendous experience in communication, in expression, in connecting folks, who can be really beneficial around the work of getting the word out and providing context and connectivity. But those artists can also be tremendously powerful assets in that public health agency when that agency internally is actually trying to figure out not just how we communicate, but almost more urgent than that, who are we trying to communicate with? Where are they spending time and energy that we need to go, rather than sort of a massive promotional blitz? And how do we actually engage and build relationships? How can we build a process deeper and broader relationships in our place, in our community. And I think artists in that kind of process work at the table, not just sort of making the communication graphic or message, can be massively useful. And we make that case in non-art sectors by, again, helping with translation, sometimes by coaching those kind of early collaborative moments. And again, ideally by giving folks access to an experience of how this can work and not just having them read about it. Although we've also got some really great published, really beautiful graphic case portraits about this work that I'll try to get in the YouTube chat by the end of the time.
Thank you very much. Is there a relationship between accountability circles and restorative practices?
Yes, I think there is. Yes, I am not an expert on restorative justice and restorative practices, so I think it would be kind of lame of me to attempt to speak of it as if with expertise. But the restorative justice and practice work that I've been around centers process and centers listening and centers accountability. And if you look up anyone on here, restorative justice, restorative practices, they exist in different fields and sectors right now. It's powerful work. And some of that work is really kind of in the center of work around racial justice, reparations work. I mean, I guess your question gives me a hint in. At the debate last night and in the last week or two, the current occupant of the White House has been talking about how damaging to our country anti-racist and anti-discrimination and anti-bias training is, how damaging critical race theory is, how damaging social justice practices and educational practices are in the federal government. And you can certainly bet that he's trying to move it into all kinds of spaces. That message and sort of make funding difficult. And the question about the relationship between accountability and restorative practice goes to the heart of the distress of the moment we're in. Because if that point of view, the point of view that teaching about anti-racism, teaching about history, teaching about accountability, teaching about the past as a necessary part of imagining a more just future, if that is demonized, written off, cut out, eliminated, we have no chance. We have no chance to imagine a more just future. We have no chance to build more loving and compassionate communities. We have no chance to actually hold each other accountable for both what has been done in the past and mistakes that are made today and mistakes that will be made tomorrow. And restorative practice is based in social justice work and is based in the notion of accountability, to my knowledge, to my experience. So I think we are in a battle moment right now where the occupant of the White House is attempting to tell us that justice, accountability, history, imagination, and restoration have no place. And he's wrong.
Our next question comes from a person who asks, as an artist of color, how or what would you suggest that we can take actions of our own to provide greater reach for our art?
I don't want to answer that question casually because I don't want to pretend that I have smart thoughts for the artist of color or BIPOC, creative and cultural community, because again, I get the mic tonight, but there are many people with much smarter things to say about that. But I'll tell you from my experience, I think we are at a moment where in many places, municipal agencies and community organizations are recognizing that there are things they need to do in service to transparency, recovery, and rebuilding that require a kind of public engagement and a kind of trust that they do not historically have often in their communities, and particularly, although not exclusively, in communities of color. And I think in this moment, there are opportunities for all artists to reach to those organizations and agencies and help make visible the tools and assets that we have that can help build more transparent and just practice between municipal agencies, community organizations, and residents in a place. But I also want to go sideways and say, I recognize you're not just saying, how can artists of color connect with funding and connect with opportunities to do social justice work? Why should an artist of color be marginalized or relegated to that? Why shouldn't everyone have the opportunity to be as creative and expressive as the white artist who's never had to think about justice or change or racism in their lives? And that point is absolutely correct. And I don't mean to insinuate otherwise. So I'm going to say some names. Carlton Turner, Jacob Padron, Nicole Brewster. I'm going to say the names Rebecca Martinez. I'm going to say the names Estefania Fadul, Anu Yadav. I'm going to say the organization Alternate Roots, and the organization, the United States Department of Arts and Culture, USDAC, as people and places that have been working strategically, specifically around what you're asking, and have writings and resources and incredible thinking about it. So I'm going to say that, and I'm going to ask you to put more in the YouTube chat for Scout to read if you want to take that question a step further, or ask me to be clearer about something, or just tell me to go further.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and for inviting that conversation. In the meantime, you speak about these moments of the global pandemic and change, and of course the election. How should artists better prepare for these moments?
I mean, I think we have to think about every asset we have to bring people together, build coalitions, problem solve, and envision just futures. We just have to prepare to put those to use in as many spaces where the movements and values we care about are strong. We need to join the fight. We need to be part of movements. We need to contribute our tools. And I know for me personally, something that I cut out of tonight's talk was more specifics about my thoughts around November 4th and 5th. And if indeed there's a challenge to election results from the right, what my job is as an artist, as a US citizen, as a white man with privilege, as a person with a full-time job, where I need to place my body and what risks I need to take to make certain that the perpetrator of great harms and building on historic harms does not get to steal and cheat their way into more time in a leadership role in this country. So that's what I think. Be prepared, connect with movements, express, communicate, and look for ways to bring people together. Not like, oh, whatever everybody thinks is okay, I'll make space for everybody no matter what they think. Look for helping bring people together into coalitions that are going to align around the things you believe need to happen. That's what I mean by coalitions and bringing people together. Not a morally relativistic or morally relative. Everybody's got a right to say what they need or think.
Just a follow-up question on that. How can artists best connect with these movements?
You know, I would look local. I mean, I would start by looking at what are the activist threads or organizations in your local community? Who's doing that work? I would imagine in most places, like I'm in Phoenix, and if I Google Phoenix, democratic organizing, or I Google Phoenix, activists around reproductive rights, or Phoenix, I don't know why I'm saying comma so much, you get the grammatical picture. But if I say Phoenix preparing for a coup, there's actually a huge website here about people talking about creative and cultural ways to prepare if a coup is on the way. So I advise you to look around on drive down to City Hall or Town Hall and see sort of what sort of protester signs have been put up lately and look for who's organizing. And if you want to go national, look at the ACLU, look at Planned Parenthood, look at Stacey Abrams' organization, look at Michelle Obama's Get Out the Vote organization. There are lots of spaces you can look for resources.
Thank you. One last question. How can the tactics you speak about be implemented on a broader scale, even outside the artistic community, so it can encompass America and all these diverse groups better?
You know, they say the history of change movements is built one relationship at a time. And even in this day and age of instant worldwide communication and tweeting and live YouTube streaming, I believe that nothing is more powerful than one person listening and talking with and connecting with another person. And that is our best hope for change, that we talk to people that we want to activate because their values align with ours, but they're just not so engaged. Engage them. Or a family member or friend who believes differently than you, might vote differently than you, might organize differently than you. Listen, engage, connect, try to persuade, but start by listening. Because that bond, you as a human being who believes what you believe and not being crazy and evil and what the media paints those who believe what you believe to be, that makes a difference in the consciousness of someone who believes differently. Right now, anyone who believes differently than you every day is having messages pumped into their brain that tell them you are bad and that you will destroy their way of life and that they should fear you. And you can't defeat that online. But you can create and connect and engage and listen. I would say shake a hand or hug someone. You can't really do that right now, but you can still look someone in the eye from a few feet away. And that, I think, has to happen at an unforeseen and never before seen scale in the next 5 weeks to get us where we need to be and beyond, because it won't end with this election. We have much work to do.
Thank you very much. This concludes tonight's program. Thank you for attending. Be well and stay safe.
Stay safe. Be healthy. Thank you.